So the first lesson in the second module is on circles, which is the part of the conics unit. Some of you guys may have done a little bit of this at the end of the year. So if it's, a review for you, it should be easy, okay? Before we actually get into circles, the first thing we're going to review right away is the midpoint and distance formula. Okay, if you remember, midpoint is a point, right? And if we graph a line in the coordinate plane or a segment, we want to find the midpoint. We want to find the ordered pair that puts it in the middle. But what it ends up being is just the average of the x's and the average of the y values. And that's how you find the midpoint. Now, the distance formula, however, right? Some people will use Pythagorean theorem, but the distance formula itself is the square root of x2 minus x1 all squared plus y2 minus y1 all squared. It really doesn't matter which way you subtract the x's, as long as you subtract the y's in the same order. So keep that in mind. So we're going to do one or two examples here together, and then I'm going to have you try one on your own, and then come back and check your answers. So the first one, we want to find the midpoint between 6, 8 and 1, negative 4. All we're going to do is, here's x1, y1, here's x2, y2. So we're just going to add the x's, so 6 plus 1 divided by 2. That'll give me the x coordinate of the midpoint, which would be 7/2 or 3.5. Then for the y values, it would be 8 plus negative 4 divided by 2, which is going to give you 4/2, which is 2. Now to find the distance between the 2 points, right, the distance is going to be the square root of, now it doesn't matter again what x you start with, as long as you keep it in the same order. So we're going to do 6 minus 1 all squared plus, subtract the y's now, 8 minus negative 4 all squared. But when I subtract that negative, it becomes a positive. So it ends up being the square root of, this is going to give me 5, and 5 squared is 25, plus this is going to give me 12. 12 squared is 144. And 25 plus 144 is 169. And the square root of 169 is 13. Okay. Now, the next one, when I go to find the midpoint here, right, if I add the x's, 2 plus negative 2, and then I divide by 2, 2 plus negative 2 is 0. So the midpoint is going to be at 0. Then negative 1 plus 5 divided by 2, right, is going to give me 4/2, which is 2. Remember, add the x's, divide by 2, add the y's, divide by 2. Now the distance between the 2 points, right, we're going to do 2 minus negative 2, minus negative 2, which becomes plus. So it's going to be the square root of 16 plus. The next one, we're going to take negative 1, subtract 5, all squared. It's going to give us negative 6, squared is 36. So the distance between these 2 points is 52. Now, we do want to simplify this radical into root 4 times root 13, which would give me 2 root 13. Simplifying radicals is something you need to remember from Math 1 and 2. Okay, do me a favor. Go ahead, try number 3. Come back and check your answer. So, for number 3, when you calculate the midpoint, you should get negative 5/2, comma, negative 9/2. And for the distance, right, you should get the square root of 50, which is going to simplify to root 25 times root 2. And that would simplify to 5 root 2. So now let's move on to a circle. All right, what is a circle? A circle is a locus of points that are equidistant from a point called the center. So when I look here, if HK is my center, right? If we plot millions and millions of points around this center, and each point is equidistant from that center, where it has the same distance, right? What that forms is what we call a circle. Now the equation for a circle is x minus h all squared plus y minus k all squared equals the radius squared. And it's actually derived from the distance formula we used up above. Okay, so it is very important to know. Now what you have to understand here is the center of the circle is h comma k. Now what you have to understand is when you plug a value in to the circle formula, right? Basically these subtraction signs will change the sign, which means when we pull the center out, we have to think, right? Almost in a way, the opposite of h and opposite of k, right? We just think that. It's not mathematically correct to say that or write that, but we think it. Now, if the radius squared is, if this is r squared, that's the radius squared. So the radius is the square root of the radius squared. So how do we graph these circles? Well, the first thing we do is we find the center. So if this is the equation of our circle, right away our center is going to be at the opposite of -2, which is +2, the opposite of -1, which is at 1. So we can go ahead and plot our center at 2, 1. Now our radius, if the radius squared is equal to 25, then the radius is just the square root of 25, which is 5. So what do? Well, it's real easy to calculate the distance horizontally and vertically in the coordinate plane. So what I'm going to do is move 5 units up, 3, 4, 5, 5 units to the right, 5 units down, 5 units to the left, and now, I know this doesn't look like a circle, but it is. That would be our circle. Okay? So let's look at another example. So in this example, my center right away is going to be at the opposite of 3, which is -3. And then if it's y plus 2, it's going to be -2. So I can go ahead and plot that center. Now again, if the radius squared is 16, and the radius is the square root of 16, which is 4. And now we're going to use that to find the other points. So we go 4 units up, 4 units to the right, 4 units down, and then to the left. And that is our circle. Okay? Now here, whenever you just see x squared or y squared, think of this as being x minus 0 squared, and think of this as being y minus 0 squared. So if it's just x squared, that means the x coordinate of your vertex or your center is going to be 0. So our center here is obviously going to be at 0, 0. And again, if our radius squared is 1, the radius is the square root of 1, which is 1. So we would go up 1, right 1, down 1, left 1, and we can go ahead and sketch our circle. Okay? Now, just as we can graph a circle, we need to know how to write the equation of a circle. Well, it's really no different. We're going to use the equation of a circle formula, which is x minus h all squared plus y minus k all squared equals the radius squared. So right away here, if my center is at 8, -2, here's h, here's k, and my radius is 10. So it's x minus 8 all squared plus y minus -2 all squared. But as soon as I see subtract the negative, I'm going to change that to plus positive. equals the radius squared, and 10 squared is 100. And that is our equation. The next one, right? Here's h, here's k, if this is my center. So x minus negative 6 all squared, bling bling that, plus y minus 1 all squared equals. When I take the radius of 2 root 3 and I square it, what you need to know is that's the same as doing 2 root 3 times 2 root 3. 2 times 2 is 4. Root 3 times root 3 is 3. 4 times 3 would give me radius squared of 12. Okay? The third example here, again, from the graph, all we're going to do is gather the two pieces of information we need to write an equation for a circle. First thing we need is a center, and this center is at negative 3, 0. The other part I need is the radius. Well, if I count from the center to a point on the circle, I'll get the radius is 2 here. So the equation of my circle is x minus negative 3 all squared, bling bling it, make it positive, plus y minus 0 all squared, or you could just have y squared equals the radius of 2 all squared. Over here now, my center is at negative 2, 1. So I'm going to go ahead and start my equation, x minus negative 2 all squared, bling bling it, plus y minus 1 all squared equals, what is my radius here? My radius is 4, and the radius squared would be 16 then. So for the next example, if they tell us the endpoints of the diameter are 8, 0, and 0, 6, what you have to remember is we need the center and the radius to write the equation. So these are the two things we need to find first. Well, how do I find the center? Well, if this is the diameter, the center is going to land right in the middle. So what I'm going to basically do is find the midpoint, right, of this diameter. So right away, I'm going to take the x's, add them and divide by 2, 8 plus 0 divided by 2. Then I'm going to add the y's and divide by 2. So my center, 8 plus 0 is 8, divided by 2 is 4. 0 plus 6 is 6, 6 divided by 2 is 3. So my center is at 4, 3. So right there I can start my equation, x minus 4 all squared plus y minus 3 all squared equals. Now I need the radius. Well, if this center is at 4, 3, I'm going to find the length of this segment using the distance formula. So the length of the radius is going to be the square root of, now it doesn't matter what endpoint of the diameter you use, but I have to use the distance formula. So 4 minus 8 all squared plus 3 minus 0 all squared is going to give me negative 4 squared. It's going to give me 3 squared. So it's going to be the square root of 16 plus 9, which gives me the square root of 25. So if the radius is equal to 5 units, the radius squared is 25. And right away here, this would be the equation of my circle. Okay? Now, if the center is at 3, 7 and goes through the point 9, negative 7, we already have the center. So we can start this equation off. X minus 3 all squared plus y minus 7 all squared equals. Now I have to find the radius using the distance formula. So the square root of 3 minus 9 all squared plus 7 minus negative 7 all squared, bling bling it. It's going to give you negative 6 squared, which is the square root of 36 plus. This is going to give you 14 squared, which is 196. when you add 36 and 196, you get the square root of 232, right? But if that's the length of the radius squared would be 232. And we are done. Okay, I know this is a lengthy lesson. We have a couple more examples and I'll put you on your own. Now, if you take a minute to try this next problem and come back and check your answers, that'd be great. Now, if the center is at 0, 0, you should know right away you could do x minus 0 all squared plus y minus 0 all squared, or you could just say it's x squared plus y squared. Either one of these would work. So now I have to find the radius using the distance formula. So the square root of 0 minus 2 all squared plus 0 minus negative 4 all squared, bling bling it. That's going to give me negative 2 squared plus negative 4 squared, which is going to give me the square root of 4 plus 16, which is the square root of 20. So if the radius is the square root of 20, the radius squared is root 20 times root 20, which is just 20. And that could go over here. So either one of these equations would be correct. Now the next one, right away they give us the center. So we can start this equation off, no problem. X minus negative 3 all squared, bling bling it, it's plus y minus 1 all squared equals. Now, what I'm going to do is start this graph over here. I'm going to plot negative 3, 1. Then I'm going to graph the line x equals 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what this circle is going to be is it's going to be tangent to this circle, meaning this tangent line is going to intersect the circle at one point. But what we need to know is if I draw the radius from the center to that point of tangency, I can easily calculate the radius using basically the distance formula or just count the horizontal distance. So if I look from negative 3 to 4, how many units is that? My radius is going to be 7. So 7 squared is 49. And I am done. Now the last one here. The center is at 5, 8, and tangent to y equals 2. Remember, up here, x equals a number is a vertical line. Y equals a number is a horizontal line. So if I were to actually graph this situation, if I plot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so we're going to 1, 5, 8 right here. Then if I graph that line y equals 2, you need to know that's a horizontal line. And right away, if you notice, I can draw the circle like this. And again, I'm going to draw that radius from here to the point of tangency. Well, if this has a y value of 2 and the center has a y value of 8, what is this distance here going to be? The radius is 6. So right away, when I go to do this, my center is at 5, 8, so x minus 5 all squared plus y minus 8 all squared equals, my radius is 6, so 6 squared is 36. And we are done.